Curtis Calhoun here with MMA News, and my next guest is fired up, getting ready to return at UFC 285. Mana Martinez. How's it going, Mana?
Doing well, doing good, excited.
First things first, man. Talk to me a little bit about this Cameron Saaiman matchup. Obviously, he's a guy that's getting a lot of talk, a lot of hype from the pundits, the media, fellow fighters, all that. Facing a guy like him, how much does that fire you up in terms of having that chance to stop him?
The hype and all the media around him, or certain people talking about him, it doesn't really bother me, and I haven't really quite paid attention to it much. However, what does excite me is the matchup stylistically. From what I've studied and watched, he's a stand up guy, and if you've watched my fight, seen my fights in the past, I love to keep it standing as well. So that's the thing that I can say excites me more so than the hype, or trying to end this hype train, which I could care less about. I was once in that position, just as young as him, with all the hype around me as well. But eventually it dies out. So I'm just excited for the match stylistically.
I was about to ask you about that too, because I feel like when you have an opponent like him, where you know what you're going to get in terms of a guy that's going to be willing to stand and bang and really give it to you. I mean, kind of talk to me a little bit about that. Like, as a fighter, how exciting is that to have a willing dance partner, and you're going into the fight knowing that it's probably going to be an exciting matchup.
It's always exciting, and I've said it before in the past. Once this fight was brought to my attention or offered, it got me more excited than any fight I've had offered to me in a while. I think the other fight that got me this most excited was a fight that actually got me into the UFC against Jose Johnson. And he's obviously in the UFC now, I think, fighting this weekend. But that's another stand-up striker, guys. So matchups like this really get me going, and they kick my training into another level, man. So it just excites me, and I'm happy for it. There's always that thought in the back of my mind that the guy shoot and turn into a wrestler, because I've had that happen before. My Contender Series fight, to be exact, studying that opponent, he had a boxing background, and I figured that fight might have stayed standing. Unfortunately, I was woken up to being tapped out by a triangle choke. So I just have to prepare for the unexpected, and in case he does make it into a wrestling match, grappling affair, I'll be ready for that as well.
I was about to ask you about that too, because I feel like when we look at your fights, your last few fights specifically, right? You're a real stand-up fighter in terms of a guy that likes to strike and throw bombs, and especially early on in the fight. But I feel like your grappling doesn't get enough love too. I mean, do you kind of see yourself as more of a well-rounded fighter now as opposed to earlier in your career?
Definitely. And it's funny you mentioned that. I can remember my early amateur days, my early amateur fights, pulling guard and popping off arm bars. So I definitely do have the jiu-jitsu to rely on, and the slick ground game, I guess you could say. It's just a matter of when it's time to pull that out. And I've been working so hard on my wrestling and grinding that, since my prior camp, and even when I made this move back, I've been trying to mesh all my skill sets together, and come March 4th, it'll definitely be showcased.
How much extra excitement does it add in terms of being on the big card like this, UFC 285? John Jones is coming back and all that. I mean, how much more extra excitement does that add?
It adds a lot of more extra excitement, especially fighting in front of a live crowd. I've always loved fighting in front of, whether it be my hometown or any type of crowd. Just hearing that extra cheer, sometimes boo, really gets me going. And it's a stacked card. I'm gonna make sure to soak up all the fight week vibes, and from this fighter, this stardom, just soak it all up. And it's stacked from top to bottom. I haven't seen a card like this in a while, and to be a part of it is a true blessing. And I got to give a huge thanks to the UFC for adding Cameron and I on this. And I know, again, stylistically, our matchup is going to be a fun one for the fans.
Some of the fighters that I've talked to that have fought at the UFC Apex have, some of them have actually gotten used to having, not really a lot of fans in attendance and being able to hear their corner. But I feel like you're a guy that kind of feeds off of that energy of the crowd and all that. Do you feel like that's the case?
Definitely, definitely. And if you watch my Houston fight against Ronnie, I was obviously going down. I was obviously down on the scorecards 2-0 to him. So I knew I had to come out that third round firing, and sure enough, I did. I dropped him twice. Unfortunately, did not get the finish, but I knew once I heard that Houston crowd, cheer the hometown kid on, which was me. Obviously, I had to go out there and try to put an end to the fight. So there's nothing wrong with fighting the Apex either. I don't mind it one bit. I've spent quite a few minutes in that octagon, and embracing that smell, that atmosphere, and no crowd is something I'm used to as well. But I'm just, again, very grateful to fight at the highest level, with some of the best athletes in the world.
One thing I really wanted to ask you about is I see you've been working with Bob Perez for this camp. Obviously, he's worked with Derek Lewis and other fighters in the UFC. What has that experience been like for you?
It's been awesome. This is our first camp together, and usually coaches don't quite know their fighters, or it takes a little bit of getting used to for them. However, Coach Bob is very familiar with me. I fought several of his guys growing up through the regional scene, and he's styles so much, obviously, with me having to fight his opponents back then. So, going in the first day of the gym and him already switching something to my stance, or, fixing this combo of mine, or, this takedown defense was so helpful. And that definitely made me feel right at home. And just obviously, like you mentioned, him being Derek Lewis's coach, and as we all know, that's Derek Lewis is the knockout king. And prior to my 3 past fights in the UFC, they were all knockouts, all finishes. So I definitely see Coach Bob and I Coach Bob helping me get back to my finish ways and my knockout ways. And come March 4th, it'll be time to show that.
What kind of makes him stand out around the pack of coaches around the sport as opposed to other coaches? Is it the attention to detail? I guess, why do you feel like it was the right time to look at a guy with Bob Perez's experience?
Yeah, the knowledge he has is insane. He'll show something I've never seen before, or I've never thought of looking at it that way. And his stand-up style is very fitting to mine. And he's actually part of kind of the same lineage of my first coach, Coach Solis, rest in peace. And, he's told me stories about him and how they used to go, back in the days. And they have a very similar style of coaching, I say. Not quite the exact same, but it definitely reminds me of Coach Saw. And I'm very happy with him. And this will be our first of many camps.
And then I got to ask you, obviously, Jon Jones and Ciryl Gane right there at the top of the card, UFC 285. How do you see that matchup playing out, and what's your prediction?
I keep leaning back and forth. I don't know. I told my dad last night I can see Gane dancing around Jones, and then a few weeks back I said Jon Jones is going to run right through him. So right now it's kind of a coin flip for me, but I think I see Jon Jones getting his hand raised at the end of the day. I can't quite tell how, but he should win it. He's the more experienced, and just looking at the past and who Gane has fought, it's not quite the pedigree and the level that Jon Jones has seen. So I have a feeling Jon Jones is going to get his hand raised and possibly have his way with him. You never, but then again, you have to take into consideration that ring rust, or his time off, and we'll see how it plays off, but we'll go with Jon Jones getting his hand raised and that belt wrapped around his waist as new.
Do you feel like ring rust is a real thing for fighters, or do you feel like that kind of gets overblown by the media and pundits and all that?
A little bit of both, definitely. You just got to know kind of how to your energy, I guess you could say, because I did have that happen to me after I had my ACL surgery. My first fight back, if I remember correctly, I think went out there and blew my wad first, second round. And I was like, oh, adrenaline dump. And I was like, this is that time off. This is, of course, I had to have that time off for my surgery, but it's just a matter of how you use your energy, I think. And John Jones should be fine. He's been in there with the who's, and again, I see him getting his hand raised.
And obviously, I know you're not looking past Cameron, but I got to ask you, man. I mean, what are your goals for 2023? Are we talking about an active 2023 in the cage? And where do you kind of see your life by the end of the year?
I definitely want to get at least 3 more fights in after this. I kind of planned on saving this for this post-fight win, God willing. I want to call for that March 25th card. If a 135 fight falls out or a 145 fight, I'm the guy to call. March 25th is in my home state. It's right across the street, San Antonio, and that's actually my birthday. So what would be the best? That would be the best gift ever, is me being able to fight on my birthday in front of my home state. So I definitely see that, and by the end of the year, I can definitely see me going 4-0, and by early next year, cracking the. So I'm excited. It could happen earlier, but I'm just going to continue to work hard and grind towards those goals.
And last question for me, man. What are the headlines going to read after your fight? Are we talking fight of the night? What should fans expect from your performance?
It could possibly end as fight of the night, but I definitely see myself having a performance of the night. And from what Cameron's probably studying or seeing on tape, he thinks he's going to go in there and maybe have his with his undefeated record. However, it's going to be a different story. I'm back home. I'm training with a good camp. I'm around my family, my loved ones, and I'm ready to go in there and show the world who Mana is. And unfortunately, with my past 3 fights, I feel like that hasn't quite shown who I am. And come March 4th, everybody's going to see, especially on the biggest card of the year thus far, that Mana's here and he's going to take over.
Absolutely, man. Well, Mana, it was great to meet you. Great to chat with you. Before we wrap things up here, I'll give the final word to shout out your team, shout out any sponsors you're working with, all that good stuff. I'll give you the final word.
You can go ahead and give me a follow on Instagram, Twitter at ManaBoy7, and I appreciate all the support. Can't wait for March 4th. Tune in, and it's exciting. You see me kind of getting antsy already. I'll be there within a week or so, and I'm excited to put the world on notice.